I'm going to call this to order. I'm sorry I didn't get the gavel. Just pretend I had it. No, I don't care. Okay, everybody, we're ready to go. It's 3 o'clock. This is a workshop for the Finance Administration Economic Development Committee. So let's all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Can I have someone approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
A second.
Okay, Paul, a second first. This is a workshop, so it's not really as formal, but we do have 7 council members. We have 4 here. We have Mr. Passament, Mr. McKellen, and Mr. Reitz online. So it's a workshop format. It'll be less formal, but I want to start with citizen comments. Do we have anybody who wants to speak? I'm sure they'll speak later. Am I right? Okay. So it's a workshop where we're going to have a discussion with administration. Mr. Robinson's created a few things with administration. It'll be a discussion with council members and administration, and then we'll go from there. So Mr. Robinson, you're up. He wants to talk about the new procurement code, and you all know what that is, right? We're good. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for all the public and other staff members for being here, because this is pretty important for us as we go forward. Just to preface what we're going to talk about today, of course, this is the draft version of the Beaufort County's new purchasing code, or ordinance, as you might would say. This has been in production for many months. Between our legal team, our outside attorneys, our procurement staff, our finance staff, and some executive team members have worked on this for many months to produce this draft. And the purpose of today is to take a deep dive into this document, to answer any questions, accept suggestions, and find other areas that we can explore or change or edit as we move forward. The intent is to leave today, accept those changes. Staff will listen, will take plenty of notes, will make changes, and hopefully prepare that and come forward to the Finance Committee for presentation or your consideration of the completed policy in August 24th. 26th. There we go. Thank you.
Are we going to put the red line version up so people can see it? Or?
I think Brenna has both copies. We can put the red line up. I would suggest we put the cleaner version up because the red line is really messy.
Okay, and you'll talk about where you made changes.
Yes, ma'am, we can. So I'll talk about that. I'll begin to talk about that to start with. So as I am told, I wasn't as part of the initial team that started to work on this. The creation of this policy was a completely new product. So this isn't cut and paste or editing of our old code. Brand new code that began. The brand new code was presented in a draft form to our team. The legal team, finance team, and procurement team worked together with the outside attorney to develop what you have before you. Our outside attorneys then took this combination of effort of back and forth discussion about every detail throughout the document and presented that to the county or to the executive team, really to county council, on June the 10th. So since then, I've had this document for us to work on and drill down to some other areas of concern and make a few additional changes, additions. At that point, there was some information from some sections of our old code that were appropriate for this code. So then we were able to copy some of that information, make some updates and changes, and add to this. So what you have before you.
Can I ask Brenda to just blow that up a little more?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's no way anybody can read it. I can barely read it. A little smaller, maybe. just so everybody can read it there. There you go. Good.
So
Okay,
my,
thanks.
my hope is that you've all had time to read through it. Like I said, it is, this is a 29-page document, if I have them all. Maybe the red line version was at 37 pages, because there was a lot there. But the finished project right now is pretty large. It begins with the general description, some general provisions, and then moves on to a few pages of definitions. Our old policy had some definitions, but this helps us to refine. There's about 45 different definitions that are listed here, and I think every time I read this, I add another specific item so we can help to identify those things that may not have been unclear in our previous policy. Was there, if you all had a chance to read through this, is there, how would you like to move forward? Would you like to go page by page, or would you like to address concerns on different pages?
I think we should go page by page. I
Okay.
want to make sure I have Ms. Howard's comments, because she sent them to me.
She did, and
I didn't get to print them.
she did, and I also have them and documented them in
So you'll talk
here,
about
so I
them,
can
okay.
read those. If there were no concerns or questions, and I have some notes from other council members that I
Yeah.
took on here, so I
Okay.
can identify those. I think I got all the way to, in my document, it's the end of the definitions, is number 45, under emergency purchase. And that definition of purchase, emergency purchase means the purchase of goods or service when there exists an immediate threat to public health, welfare, critical economy, and efficiency, or under a state of emergency conditions. There was a question about a further definition or further explanation of immediate threat. So that is something that we'll look at and try to further define what's an immediate threat mean.
While you there,
Yes, sir.
kind of give me an idea of number 44 after the fact.
44, yes, sir. So after the fact, I'll read it for the public so they can understand what you're asking. So after the fact is an after the fact purchase. That is a request to create a purchase order in support of a good or service or contract which has already been received or executed. So this is not supposed to happen. This is an event that a good or service, well, there are some cases where it does happen. In the case of emergency service, we would have to procure emergency service
Right, that's
before we
excluded.
have the authorization or purchase order to make that
Right.
purchase. So in the event that proper procedure was not followed, an individual or a county employee would have made a purchase and then found out that, well, we did that wrong. So this after the fact purchase is that process by which we have to vet that purchase and,
Okay, let me,
go ahead,
so I can understand. I just bought a county car
okay?
that I shouldn't have that bought, purchased.
Yes.
Okay, now what happens with me?
So what would happen is if you bought a county car that you weren't allowed to,
Yes, sir.
you would have to, you don't have the means to pay for that vehicle without it going through the finance department. So you would have to go to the finance department and request a purchase order. That purchase order comes to the finance department and they're like, hey, you didn't have permission to buy this car. You didn't use a contract, you didn't procure it properly, all these different things. This becomes an after-the-fact purchase.
Okay.
So the county, in that sense, would have to begin to do some investigation and begin that process of vetting that purchase and determine whether or not you had the need to purchase that, the intent was to purchase this properly, you made a mistake in purchasing that, and then go forward to ratification. So the ratification process is a different section of the policy, and we've had to do that before and for an after-the-fact purchase. So after the fact is a negative thing, but it defines what that is and how we address that properly, just in
okay.
case you accidentally bought a car.
Got you. Okay.
Accidentally.
Accidentally. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
But the
any-
person will be, I will be dealt with appropriately, right?
Yes, sir.
I
So,
got you.
so
Okay.
there's a couple of different things that happen. First, from the finance department, we have to manage this expense or on behalf of the county. So, we have to make sure we don't damage a vendor who maybe sold you this car, that we manage that properly. So this whole process defends the county's position as well as considers the position of the individual with which you purchased the car
Gotcha.
from.
Okay.
And later, the disciplinary action would come. You'd
Wait,
probably get in
okay.
trouble for buying a car accidentally.
And you're gonna have to pay for it yourself.
Right. There are all kinds of, there's always some backstory to every type of purchase. Sometimes this can be a miscommunication, sometimes this can be a mistake. And I would say very infrequently would we see that there was some nefarious act that was an intentional. But there is a process for us to make sure that it doesn't happen. And if it does happen, we have to have a system in place to manage that as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, I bet Victoria's sitting on her hands right now. Yeah. Yeah, did I do good? Okay. Victoria would be that person in the finance department that would produce that purchase order. So she would be among the first staff members to recognize that something's not right.
Gotcha.
Any questions on the definitions page?
Now, because it's in red, this is new to the policy and procedure?
Yes, sir. So you have the red line version.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll see in red and some cross out, and there's a lot of red in that document,
Yeah,
a lot.
okay. Okay, go ahead.
Is there an online question? Yes, sir, I see you.
Okay, speaking of about number 44, we have a purchasing manual. We have purchasing guidelines. We have purchasing forms. We have purchasing authority. Therefore, it is somewhat redundant to have an after-the-fact purchase. It should never happen with our purchasing system.
Yes, sir, you are absolutely right. We have all types of measures in place to prevent that from happening, but things do happen, so we're prepared to act in case it does. And it is mentioned after the fact. The reason the definition is there is that term is used later in the ratification section for for ratification of an after-the-fact purchase. That's the reason that the term is highlighted.
And I do understand that. And it says, goods or services or a contract which has already been received or executed. I think there is something that we have to put in so that our vendors know that if they have not received a bona fide purchase order, that purchase order does not exist and therefore cannot be honored. So if in fact we have a vendor that has sold a car accidentally to somebody without a purchase order, that's a problem on their part as well.
It could be, that might be difficult to communicate with all the vendors who sell cars and tell them that, they need to have this proper documentation to sell something to the county. But we can certainly find a place in the policy that addresses that or add some language that might address that.
But Mr. Robinson, the
Yes.
policy is meant for employees to follow, right? Not, I don't expect the vendors to read this policy and follow.
No, ma'am.
So if a vendor sells Mr. Glover a Navigator
Yeah,
for 70 grand, I mean, the problem is with Mr. Glover, not with the vendor.
That's
And we
correct.
would work through that, but,
That's correct. And that's why I talked about the vendor in that
Yeah.
sense. This process, we have to protect Beaufort County first, but we definitely have to consider the impact on a vendor who may have some loss because of this negative
sure.
action. Okay,
Okay.
let's see.
Next,
You're on page 8, right?
Yes, I am, down on page 8. And these are, please stop me if you have any more comments where I am. I'm just kind of going through the notes that I've already taken on the document. And I'm more than happy to stop and talk about anything throughout all 28 of these pages, or 27, wherever we are now. Down in number 2 on page 8 is, let me back up one. This is under section 2-505, and these are exempted items from the competitive, or from this process, from the purchasing process. Number 1, there is a county council, upon recommendation of the administrator, may exempt by ordinance specific items, services, or projects from these procedures when county council finds such exemption is in the best interest of the county. This was a very similar section to the previous ordinance. And these are things like A is works of art from museums and display. You often don't get but one chance to buy a specific piece of art. Books for the library, copyrighted educational films, postage stamps, professional dues and memberships, medications and drugs, utility fees. We can't really go out and solicit a different utility company for our bills. That's just not something that's possible. Fixed wing and rotary aircraft maintenance. Fixed-based operator, so an FBO is an FBO would be a fuel company operator at one of our airports, those types of things. And then K is of specific importance, and this is professional consulting services. So the reason professional consulting services may be exempt is when this specifically in the competitive bid process, so for an RFP or an IFB, specifically for engineering firms are exempt from competition based on their pricing. Their competition can only be part of an RFQ, so request for qualifications.
Would you like to explain all those acronyms to the
I
public?
can, I'm sorry.
I always
Yes,
do
so-
that to Jared, but I'm going to do it to you.
So the typical process, an IFB is what we refer to as an invitation for bid. So an invitation for bid in a competitive solicitation process is typically based on price. So this is, we want to buy a car. We want this type of car and we would like to have it at this price. Every vendor who has that car that meets this specification and has the license to provide us that car gives us their price. And we can look at the responsiveness of that bidder. It is not always low price, but often low price is the most important factor. But the quality of that service, if we have something specific that we have in mind, then that specificity may have more importance over the price. But typically an IFB is, we want this specific service or this specific product, and the bidder submits their bid for that product and their price for that product, and typically it is the lowest bid that earns that IFB.
Mm-hmm.
An RFP is a request for proposals. So this may be a more complex type of solicitation that we document a scope of work. So the scope of work is a pretty detailed description of the work that we want, but it allows the vendor to apply, to bid based on that scope of work, and then it gives them an opportunity they can expand on the scope of work. They can offer independent costs for scope of work in there, but it allows us to make a better decision for a bidder's proposal. So it's more of a proposal, not just a number. I can sell you a car for $70,000, or I can sell you a fleet of cars. In that sense, it's a little more complex type of solicitation, but yet a competitive solicitation.
Right. Madam Chairman,
Yeah.
because I got it noted someplace else, but he mentioned the lowest bid.
Mm-hmm.
When you say the lowest bid, do you do that by the penny, or you do a range for a low bid? For example, if that Navigator is gonna cost $70,000, but somebody else got it for $69.99. My question is really, how do you classify the lowest bid, especially when it comes down to maybe quality, or after you evaluate a vendor or whatever and stuff? the lowest bid may not be the one you recommend.
That's correct.
Yeah, so,
So there's an evaluation criteria that comes
Okay.
along with every one of these processes, with an IFB, an RFP, or an RFQ. So there's this criteria by which the vendor should bid against that criteria, and the selection committee scores those bids based on that evaluation criteria. So it may be that this person has a car that's 1 cent less, but it's not available for 3 months, and we need it now. So in that evaluation criteria, it may say, this is available now, so we're willing to pay a penny more to get it tomorrow versus a penny less to get it last week. So that score sheet that's done by that committee is very important.
I guess my question really is, do you go down to the penny, or you go into a sort of a percentage of low bid? So I'm a contractor.
Right.
And I've got a bid in there, but it's the lowest bid, but it may not be,
The best contractor. So let's say we had an IFB and 2 bidders gave us the exact same price. The exact same number. How do we choose which one is there? So the process is here is that you put together a committee. This committee is normally some staff members with expertise in that field, along with someone from finance, and managed by, or the facilitated by someone from the procurement department. It can be 3 members to 5 members. Those score sheets, so you 4 could be that committee. And each of you independently scores that sheet based on a presentation or an interview or just the documentation that you get. Your scores are combined, and if there is no difference between the product, let's say it's an identical product for the identical price, you might score it differently based on its availability, its location. One vehicle is in Spartanburg and one's in Burton. Well, maybe your score would have preference to a local vendor, to a local bidder. And if all of your scores, would be very rare that all of your scores would be the same, but a bidder could be selected based on that highest score, and it could be a couple of points different. But that is the process.
okay.
I don't know if that's helpful.
No,
Did I
no,
get
you
there?
did. You answered.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
we've seen some of those sheets, and we're gonna see some Monday, are we not, with
The
facilities?
bid tabulations, normally they're in the backup material.
Yeah.
We'll have a summary that kind of talks about some of
Right.
those things. And the ones that come Monday, there's really only one that had
There's one.
pricing. All right. So, let's see.
Professional consulting services, you had a comment on the side.
Yes, I did talk about that for a minute, and specifically about engineering firms. There is, when you kind of look in the procurement industry, there's some discussion about accounting firms as a professional type of service like that. The regulation, there is a law around engineering firms, that engineering firms do not compete on price. Engineering firms compete on qualifications. And that's why that specifically is there. So K, now, I'm not sure how yours reads. Mine reads, professional consulting services when prohibited from, that should be,
Should be,
Okay.
when prohibited from competitive bid process, engineering services should use an RFQ process and not compete based on cost of service. That's in parentheses. So that's what that intent is for. And I'm quite certain that that specific law, the title of that law is professional consulting services. And it goes on to describe that specific engineering requirement. Underneath that, the last one that's not here, or in the list that would be a provision exempt from this procedure is legal services, provided that legal services must be approved by the county administrator or county council. That has not changed. That is the same language as in our previous ordinance.
And am I correct with our document review system, there's no way to bypass that anyway anymore? You have to follow the steps in the review system.
Well, so the document review system is an internal check and balance type of system. So you would call it, it's helpful in a go-no type of situation. So the intent is to make sure that we use that system in a way that each department or individual who should review contracts are forced, the system forces it to go to the right person for signature, for compliance, for review. That's the intent of it. There are quite a few contracts or purchases that don't go through the full document review system. An emergency purchase may not use that at all. There are other types of purchases that there may be no need to go through the document review system. It could be something that's less than $35,000 that might just go to legal review. It could be something that's under $10,000 that doesn't even need quotes. So they're to say that they all do is not quite accurate, but
But all the
many
legal
do.
ones would have to go through that.
Yes, any competitive solicitations
Yeah.
should go through the document review system. So
Okay.
those would be those that are above $50,000 and, well, not always above $50,000, but if it's a competitive solicitation, it would go through the document review system.
Got it.
And quite often, a non-competitive document would as well for that justification and documentation of fair and reasonable, those
Fair and
kinds of things.
reasonable, yeah.
We're only on page 8, you know.
Okay.
No, I'm teasing you. We're good. We're good. There's supposed to be a discussion. Mr. McKellen and Mr. Passman,
Anything?
any questions? Are we good?
Yeah, no, we're good.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm not ignoring you. I know you're there.
Mr. McKellen, you okay?
Yep,
All right.
all good.
All right. So I'll move on to, well, the next page or the next section here is section 2-506. And this is purchasing responsibility and authority. It begins talking about the duties and responsibilities of the purchasing director and their department, their responsibility to negotiate contracts for personnel services and submit them for approval. So those kind of contracts would be submitted through the document review system you talked about. Another duty of the purchasing director is the exchange, trade, and/or sale of county-owned supplies, materials, and equipment which are surplus or obsolete, unused or found by the county administrator not to be required for public use. So when we have surplus equipment, there's an opportunity for the purchasing director to use our process. Maybe it's, surplus sales of equipment.
I have to back up just a minute. I
Okay.
have a note from one of our elected officials.
Yep,
It's on 506(1)B. That's the
Yep.
duties, and I didn't catch you fast enough. It states the purchasing director shall negotiate contracts
Mhm.
and so on. And this elected official said the procurement or legal departments are not in a position to perform this function on behalf of an elected official and arguably may lack sufficient expertise. They're calling it to our attention for your review and our review and discussion.
okay.
And they said for contracts, they work with Hainsworth, Sinclair, Boyd. That was news to me. To
I-
negotiate and review contracts.
You're saying an elected official?
This is our
works?
treasurer.
Mhm.
She says, the majority of our contracts relate to financial and banking matters and areas of services and law that is relatively unique to their office. And for those contracts, they go through Hainsworth, Sinclair, Boyd.
Well, we can follow up on that, and we can work with the treasurer to find which specific contract she's referencing and how that does or does not apply.
So I will give you this when we're all done.
Okay.
I just wanted to call, because it was
Yeah.
sent to me to discuss. It says, she said, if a standard is created, it may be impossible for her office to follow. The focus should instead be on the spirit of the agreement and whether similar but not exact language is in the contract. So if you would follow up, that would be
No,
helpful.
certainly. The, the intent with the purchasing process is that county council ultimately approves contracts. Staff finds a need, properly procures, presents that to committee, committee forwards that to council, council gives that permission to the administrator to execute contracts. Only council represent the people, and the body of council as a whole make that decision on behalf of the citizens we serve. So this whole process is intended to be transparent and put the county in the position to provide goods and services necessary to serve your constituents.
Mr. Chairman, I mean,
Yes, go ahead.
am I to assume that the purchasing director in the past, before the changes here, were doing these duties, but it was never in policy?
No, sir. Yeah, yes, we were doing these duties, and yes, many of this was or did exist in our old policy.
It did?
Yes,
It
sir.
does?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There are different staff members. We have, let's say, our asset manager. In the past, we've had an asset manager, and that asset manager may, if you look at your laptop, there's a county asset tag on that laptop. So that asset manager would know where that asset is, the value of that asset when it was purchased, depreciation of that asset over time, and when that single asset becomes obsolete, that asset manager identifies that this device, which may still have some value, is ready to be disposed of.
Right.
And then it would work through the purchasing director to properly sell,
Okay.
dispose of, whatever, those kind of obsolete devices.
Well, what's interesting is I've seen a lot of red line.
Oh, yeah. I put a lot of them on there.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
so, okay, go ahead.
There's a lot.
I like it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it's very specific, and it talks about everything they're supposed to do.
Right.
Even down to the question somewhere in there that talked about the purchase director must chair all the committees and
For the,
for
for
purchase contract.
solicitations, yes, for an
Yeah.
IFB, an RFP, and RFQ.
And so I assume that they may not have been in the past at all the meetings when they solicit bids and stuff.
So-
I'm glad to see that, that's
Right.
all. Yeah.
So it is not, I'm gonna have to see where that one is,
Oh, it's somewhere in there, I saw it
yeah.
somewhere.
So it's usually the purchasing, it probably says the purchasing director or designee. So what that means
Right.
is someone from the purchasing office facilitates those, a
Yeah.
bid meeting, a pre-bid meeting, and the committees the selection committee that review bids that come in.
So in the past, they may not have been there?
Oh, yes, sir, always,
Gotcha.
always. That-
Okay.
That's
But
always
it's very
part of the
clear now.
process. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
So what you see with the red lines here, remember, we didn't take the old document and cut and paste. We started anew with a brand-new document and then edited that so that we weren't bringing in any kind of old influence, any negativity forward. So we took this new document and began to edit that and add features and things that we addressed in our old document. So we didn't throw away the old document completely, because that has many years of success on it. But we did incorporate as much of those successes from the old document into this new document.
Okay,
That's why you see so much red.
okay.
Yeah,
And a lot of it's me. I spent many hours putting those red marks on that document.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, under negotiate contracts for personal services. My understanding of personal services means that particular contract has some either technical or uniqueness to it. The contractor has that. Case in point, what the treasurer was saying about, the duties and functions of her office oftentimes has contracts with certain companies because of the uniqueness of what she needs. Is that the kind of idea here? If it is, it's not really negotiating a contract. It's more along the lines of approving a contract that has those unique functions.
Well, yes, sir, I would agree. Some of the negotiation, while the document makes this the responsibility of the procurement director to negotiate, this is not necessarily means that the procurement director must do the negotiation. So the procurement director as designee may be present during negotiation. That is not uncommon for us to bring in one of our attorneys to help negotiate a contract. So, or a subject matter expert. Maybe this is a bridge project or a concrete project or some kind of engineering project where it's very critical to have the subject matter expert there. It is also just as important that we document that negotiation, that we made a fair attempt to, or a very good attempt to find the fair and reasonable price for a contract, and that we document that and we keep that documentation along with the file, if that makes sense.
Just your explanation, I think, should satisfy what the treasurer.
Yeah, that's what the
had
treasurer
said.
raised. Okay.
What, sir, what section were you reading that in?
That was
506B2,
BII,
Okay, I
negotiate
gotcha.
contracts.
page 9.
I'll make a note there and see if I can, adjust that language to express what I just talked
What we
about.
said, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because then
Okay,
it's,
yeah.
it's a
Already
clear
got
understanding of what a personal service is by definition that allows this to take place that way.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're right, Tab. I already had a note there, but now I have a bigger one. All right. What page are we on?
So
26?
you're gonna go to 10.
I was trying to skip ahead.
Nice try. But let me ask you on 10, this is what Mr. Passman asked earlier about what is the committee's level of approval?
Yes,
There it is
absolutely.
on 10.
Right, so on page 10, this is item number 2 under section 2-506. Number 2 is dollar limitations for contract execution.
Right.
So there is no change here from our existing policy, that you'll see A is really the procurement director and chief finance officer, and that's $50,000. That might be a change. I think the old was 35,000. Is that right? Yeah. The previous was 35,000. This is $50,000. So there's a $15,000 increase. And then you'll see the next is the administrator's authority is equal to or less than $150,000. Then committees of council is equal to or less than between $150,000 and $200,000, and anything above $200,000 is council authority.
And I think those are important for the public to know.
Yes.
Because a lot of times when we're in committee and we say, this has to go to council versus this we just pushed through.
Yes, ma'am.
So this was what Mr. Passman brought up before.
Yes.
That's very clear. Thank you.
Then number 4 there is ratification. So we discussed ratification a little bit at the beginning when we talked about that after the fact type of purchase. And I'll just read through this section. So this is a new section. The ratification, well, let me go back to the definition and see if I have the definition of ratification there. Okay, so I'll read that first. Some of them aren't in alphabetical order because I added to it, but we'll do that later. All right. Hank? It's hot. Yeah, oh, maybe that's it. Okay, so here it is. Ratification is number 32, it's on page 5. Ratification means the act of approving or offering formal consent to a treaty, contract, or agreement, making it officially valid. All right? So that is what happens every time the county administrator signs a contract. He ratifies it. In this case, ratification in reference to an after-the-fact purchase. Ratification shall only be approved by the county administrator or designee. Ratification may be considered for purchases which did not follow proper procedures or approvals. Upon knowledge of an after-the-fact purchase, this is Mr. Glover going out and buying a car without permission. Upon knowledge of an after-the-fact purchase, or the purchasing director or designee shall notify in writing a department head and/or the appropriate official of the purchase which is considered an after-the-fact purchase. The reason we want to do that notification is it could have been as simple as a mistake that we identified that they need to fix. So sometimes a mistake has not gone too far that we can't correct up front. And that's very important to happen. No one is perfect. There's no expectation. Well, we expect to be perfect, but we know we're flawed. So we try to make sure that we give folks the opportunity to correct that mistake in the right way. However, we need to identify that mistake in writing so that everyone knows that no one's hiding anything here. We forward that in writing, and we allow that opportunity to make that repair. Does that make sense? I think that's fair.
I do have a
Yes, ma'am.
comment from the treasurer on that 4A. Ratification shall only be approved by the county administrator or designee. She notes, and I'll give you all this, elected officials do not contract on behalf of Beaufort County. Their contracts are listed as the elected office. So she had some detail in here that you might want to take a look at.
Well, certainly. We can have that.
And have a discussion with her on
We can
that.
have that conversation.
And she's the only elected official I heard from. Nobody else contacted us, unless they went to you.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. But it's not too late.
If you would, give us an example of 4B, ratification may be
4B.
considered. for
Ratification considered for purchases which did not follow proper procedures or approvals. Well, I can refer back to last year, and this would be our park, our special needs playground. So we're all quite aware of that special needs playground. And this came before council for approval for budget. The budget for the playground was approved, but the execution of the contract was not approved. So this is that case where a department head was doing what they thought was the right thing because they had approval to have budget money, but they didn't go through the proper process to properly procure the vendor, to properly procure the equipment, and enter into a contract to spend the dollars that you had already authorized. So that is a case of an after the fact purchase. Is that helpful?
By the way, that should be may, not might.
Yes, sir. There'll be lots of those. I was typing very fast.
And I missed that. Wow, okay.
John,
All
while
right.
you're in that section of
Yes, sir.
ratification, in D, the latter part, may be held liable.
Oh, what is that word?
I'm just telling you, I don't like the word maybe. You either shall
Or will, or, yeah.
you know, but maybe so subjective.
Yes, sir. Well, so there,
You know, and I got to pay the difference in that car, but Tab may do the same thing later on and don't have to pay the difference.
I wouldn't buy a Navigator, I can't get in them. But yeah, he's got a good point, it
Right.
says, should say shall.
absolutely, I can look at that language.
And I don't know
the-
whether
the-
you want to say shall.
Right.
Because I think you want to leave it up to the administrator to deal with it and stuff.
Yes,
But
sir.
when you put may, you know, even though it's subjective, I just think, you know, it will be dealt with appropriately, some of that nature and stuff.
Yes, sir.
It's sort of ambiguous, because you're going to handle it ambiguous anyway.
Oh, yes. So, and that's why I think the word may is there versus shall. Shall doesn't give us any opportunity. Yes, non-discretionary at that point. Shall is shall.
I know.
And may gives us some room, but we can certainly look at the language there.
Just look at the language. I don't know,
The intent
anytime
is.
you got shall and may, I just kind of, it is subjective, but it is, yeah.
If we're doing the right thing and someone accidentally makes a mistake that is not nefarious in an investigation of that, and when we take a deeper dive into that purchase and we realize that this isn't anything nefarious, this was a mistake, that disciplinary action and the may there,
No,
well,
may-
I
may
mean,
is a-
shall could still
No,
be
shall is-
disciplinary
shall
action that is
definitely.
Yeah, shall is
that
a
is
must.
May is a good
Yeah.
word. I just,
Okay.
anytime I see may, very subjective, and if there's another word other than may,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but I don't know, may be the only one, the best word there.
yeah. There's potential for us to do some wording there,
Okay.
but I'll certainly look
Okay.
at that. Let's see. So that section kind of goes on, in E, it requires the purchasing director, and there's a shall. The purchasing director shall prepare justification of ratification documents. And be presented to the county administrator for consideration. So ratification is really important. We are going to ask the county administrator to ratify a purchase that was done improperly. So every detail about that needs to be collected and prepared in a summary, and a justification for that request forwarded to the county administrator. Much like we talked about, and I'll bring up the park again, last year I stood in front of you, stood in front of county council, and we talked about that and why we could justify ratification of that, and council made that decision to ratify that purchase. So there are times that you may find the county administrator will come to you for your agreement with this justification that's prepared. But that should be the purchasing department that does that research and prepares that document and prepares that recommendation and presents that to the county administrator for his consideration. All right, so let's see. Looks
John?
like I have something there. Yes, sir.
Mr. Doss.
John, if you go back to 4D, where Mr. Glover was making a
Yes,
point
sir.
about the subjectivity of may versus shall, if we leave may in there, then it gives us the slippery slope of actually showing somewhat repetition to an event that may have been rightfully done or committed. Then the option is, okay, the administrator then can or will not actually take the action that should be applied to that situation. But if you've got shall, then it doesn't leave that slippery slope to actually get around that process.
Yes, sir. I think I understand that position, certainly.
And that's the goal of all this, to tighten everything up.
Right.
Yes,
So let's just make it tight.
I would agree with that, becoming compliant as much as possible. Yet there's a balance between strict and strangling.
Rigid, yeah.
We need to make sure that our departments are comfortable, that they can continue to do their work in a compliant way without being restricted in such a way that damages our ability to serve.
John,
Yes, sir.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but help me understand, because you used the scenario about the playground. How did that actually happen?
Oh, my.
Well, I guess, let me ask it another way. If the equipment is purchased, somebody had to sign a document right?
Mm-hmm.
To give approval.
Not for approval, for the contractor to come in. The contractor is not gonna bring that equipment down.
Should not. A
Should-
contractor should not bring equipment down without a signed contract. Department heads should not sign contracts. You know,
So when did
there's
the purchase-
if we are following our process properly, that would not happen. Should
Now,
not
So
happen.
the question becomes, I guess, did the purchase director know about that?
No, sir. This is one of those, remember I described this after the fact,
So
and the
department
definition
head
of
went
after.
straight to finance and paid his bill?
More or less, the bill showed up for this service, and with no purchase order, that begins this process, something is wrong.
Okay,
And that's that after-the-fact purchase,
Okay.
that after-the-fact definition is exactly that situation.
and is that an exception, or was that a rule going in the past?
What do you
that-
mean?
That a department head could go straight to finances and pay this bill?
Oh,
Without going
absolutely.
through,
No, absolutely not.
okay,
In
No,
other words, there was a one-on or a rare event.
extremely rare,
okay,
extremely rare,
thank you,
yeah.
thank you.
Extremely, I could say that 5 times,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, all right. Let's see,
Okay,
so I got that. Any more comments there?
no,
There is a section here, section 2-507, which is retention of procurement information and public access. That existed in our previous ordinance as well, or previous code as well, and it references FOIA, it references, I have a note here that references the South Carolina State History and Records Management Act, as well as Beaufort County Ordinance. So that is pretty common for there. Servability, let's see. I don't really have any notes on the next few pages. Do you have any questions? This section talks about the next couple of pages talk about the solicitation process,
yeah.
okay? All of the, Part B talks about invitations for bid, requests for proposals, small purchases, requests for qualifications, a reverse auction, emergency procurement, sole source procurement, and a pre-qualified list. So these are all very standard solicitation processes that the procurement office uses routinely. So there's each of these section kind of goes through those actions that the procurement office would take. It defines, in a sense, what they do for each of those instances. If there's not any questions on those, or you have a specific question,
The next one I have is on page 15, section 2-512-1,
okay,
right there. And again, this is from the
Yep.
treasurer.
okay,
It states that the purchasing director will establish a selection committee. Her point is, they may not be in a position of knowledge to select the committee members. So.
yeah.
um,
So
pass that.
typically what happens, and I guess I can understand the position there, it's not intended to be restrictive in any way. That is, the purchasing director, or the purchasing department assembles, I think is maybe a better word, a committee to facilitate the review of bids. So the process is that, let's say, Ms. Tabernick, you had a project that you were going to be the project lead on, you developed the scope of work, and the procurement director would say, Ms. Tabernick, who should be on your selection committee? Should it be all members from your department? Probably not. Should it be someone from a neighboring municipality? Do we need all subject matter experts? What does the panel of review need to look like? So the purchasing director can make recommendations on who should be on your committee, so that it's not all one-sided, to make sure that the committee is appropriately vetting bids that come in.
So
it's
you might
not-
want to reword that a little bit?
We can look at that.
It looks like it's a little more rigid than what you just said,
Okay. Certainly.
because you gave a little more flexibility than what this statement says.
Well,
Just reading it.
there are some times that Ms. Tabernick would want to load her committee with people that,
I like.
that you like. Exactly. And then the competitive nature of a solicitation becomes damaged because of the selection committee itself. So it does become the procurement director or their designee's responsibility to make sure that we ensure the fair and competitive nature of a solicitation. And that is the purpose of that.
And that was one of the things in the report that we put out to public, fair and reasonable and so on.
Yes, fair and reasonable
A lot of
purchases.
these address what we put out to the public.
Yes, they do.
Okay. Okay, anybody else have something on that?
That, I made some notes there, but I want to make sure that did I discuss that enough? Or answer what your question was?
No? Good.
Yeah, okay. All right. So this moves on to, like I said, through reverse procurements and emergencies, pre-qualified list of bidders. There's some standard language in there for cancellation and rejection of solicitations. We are beginning to work on some of this. This is a lot of tremendous amount of work in the procurement department, and we have a very small procurement department. So we have at least 11 solicitations in the queue right now for us to do while we're trying to make changes within the organization. So it's very difficult. But one of the things that we can do to help vendors with pre-qualification is build in a check sheet to the solicitation. That check sheet in the solicitation allows the vendor to say, yes, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and I've put all these things in my bid package in this order. You might call it a self-evaluation, so when the bid comes into our department, we can look at that self-evaluation sheet, and if the bidder has not completed an item, maybe they have a justification for why they haven't done that, but it makes it so that when the procurement director disqualifies a bid, that there's a specific reason it's been disqualified, and that self-evaluation form of that bidder, they basically tell on themselves, I didn't do this part. Okay.
Is that new? You added that? That sheet?
It will be new.
It
It's
will
not
be after
new
it's
yet.
adopted, yes.
But it is something that we're working forward, working to get done to add to our solicitations.
That would be helpful.
It does take a little bit of load off of the procurement department for that evaluation process and put some of that responsibility back on those bidders themselves, and also help the bidder be more compliant with the solicitation. It gives them an opportunity to see that, well, I didn't do, number C, I better get that done. And they should be presented in that order.
And to go to Mr. Glover's point, it's more objective versus subjective.
Well,
You're
absolutely.
telling them what they're looking for.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They know exactly how they should respond. So there's some of that language in this ordinance as well, or in that section for the qualifications of bidders and nuts. All right, so I'm almost to the end.
No, you're not.
Okay,
Are we on page 18?
yeah.
It's on the bottom. It'll say what page. you're
I'm
on.
around 20, well, you probably have more questions, because I don't have any notes until around page 23.
No, I was gonna make a comment on 2-515-6.
Okay.
I think that was a good addition about the architectural and engineering services.
Yes,
That goes back to what you were talking about, so I thought that was a good addition you put in there. I don't have any comment other
Okay.
than that.
excellent. I'll put a check mark by that one.
You get a little star for that one. I used to give out stars when I was middle school.
Oh, my.
If you scroll down to
Gold star,
2-517,
Yes, ma'am. Sole source. Mhm.
yeah, so again, this is from the treasurer, and I'll hand you this. She says sole source contracts specifies about you know, what you have to do. While this is certainly acceptable for administration, it is not appropriate for administration to dictate to an elected office what is or was not a sole source. So I'll just leave that for you. She says, I view this as vital to maintaining investment successes, and so that might not be something administration would do. I'll provide you with that comment,
Thank you.
okay?
Is the treasurer looking at what's the word, qualified or, well, let me, I got a note, there's a check mark here on sole source. You know, John Rembo came in with the airport, and he talked about maybe one or two contractors that could do certain things.
Yes,
That was
sir.
APAC for paving.
And so, is that something that, as a county, we need to also evaluate to make sure that we're getting a good bid, even though it's a sole source?
Absolutely.
Because, you know, the two contractors, and knowing that, will tell one another, hey, Tab, don't bid on this today, let me do it, and then you can bid on it next time. How do we know whether we are really getting a good contract price?
So we can talk about the paving contract, or APAC, that we recently did. And there are a few there are a few, I guess, solicitations that come through that really only have one bidder, and it happens. So typically, the process is we use OpenGov now. This is a system that reaches out to all these types of qualified bidders. There are times that we'll reach out to 1,000 different companies or more for a specific service or product. So we try to cast a very large net and attract as many bidders as possible. When we get a single bid solicitation, sometimes we'll evaluate that and say, well, you know, I'm just not comfortable with this single bid. We're going to rebid. So we rebid the process, and it comes back with the same single bidder. So or maybe we only got two bids and that's not enough. So we went back out, whatever the reason is. So one of the things that we do initially is a resolicitation. Not always, but that's a common thing that we would do. So we put it back out for bid. Let's say we don't put it out for bid. We don't put it out for bid. Then we have to really justify why is this a sole source? Or why is this a single bidder solicitation? So we go through this process of is their price fair and reasonable? Have we done any research to see if there are any other vendors out there that we can encourage to bid on this project? So that we get away from maybe two folks and say, I'll bid on the next one, you bid on this one. I don't know that happens, but we, of course, try to discourage that and encourage as many bidders as possible. So after we do this and we justify this single bid, we can justify that their price is fair and reasonable, so we would use maybe an engineer. We would use an engineer that would look at this project and evaluate the merits of that project and tell us that they think, based on the scope of work, that it should cost this much.
Okay.
Sometimes we have staff members that say it should cost about this much. So when their bid comes in and it's twice that, maybe we'll rebid this.
Okay.
So we use that process to vet that fair and reasonable. And then finally, we negotiate that price. Because we only have one bidder, we have the opportunity to negotiate that price with that bidder and try to get that into what may be considered a fair and reasonable price, or within our budgeted amount
Right.
for that.
And that was my other question is there any opportunity for value engineering on projects that come in sole source?
Absolutely. So there are times we could look at a larger project that may have been bid that we could split into 3 phases perhaps. And we could bid some, instead of a design build that started with infrastructure work or ground or mulching, we could split that project up into specific. This time we're only going to do site work, and then we're gonna do design work, then we're gonna do infrastructure work, so that project can be broken up to encourage competition,
Gotcha.
instead of one big company that can do all the project.
Okay.
So it kind of happens both ways. A lot of that is conversation between our procurement office and engineering or infrastructure, or even our project managers in the CIP. So that conversation that we have between the needs of those organizations and the really, in this sense, the legal compliance portion that procurement does. So procurement, the procurement office is really about compliance with the ordinance. And there sometimes can be some conflict between, I need this right now, and I need it today, and I need my Escalade right now. I need that car tomorrow. And procurement doesn't operate that way. It is the process and procedure that has to be proper before we purchase that equipment or
Yeah,
service.
the word I couldn't think of was expertise for the treasurer. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll get there,
So,
no
Mr.
problem.
Robinson,
Yes,
there were a
ma'am.
couple of times during the year on bids that we had only one bid.
Yes,
And remember, I asked different people, and so this would be helpful when you don't go back for resolicitation. Because, it kind of drops on the table, but if it's one bid. And the other issue is, just to remind the public, sole source was one of the topics in the letter we released. So Mr. Glover's question is right on target. If I say I can only buy an escalator at one place, whatever it is, I buy a Navigator, whatever. But it's not true, because that's not the only place that sells it.
that's right.
So,
Automobiles.
Or,
yeah.
or maybe it's a Dodge that's the right fit for us,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So I will say, to back up just a little bit, the number of sole source purchases in the past, I think were affected by the market at the time.
Sure.
So there was lots of work out there and very few companies willing to do work. So often, in the last few years, we've had to accept the sole source bids or single bids to solicitations just to get jobs done. We saw prices escalate just enormously, and that really affected the market. The number of employees that company has available to be able to perform that type of work, and the needs of the county. We've seen capital projects that should have only taken 5 or 6 months to get done have taken more than 2 years to get done. And that is really just part of the economy that affects us in that way. So the important thing that finance staff or procurement staff can do is to make sure we come forward to council and properly give you the documentation that justifies this decision or the recommendation that's coming forward from staff, that we approve a grant or accept a grant. So we're working to improve on that so that your council and committee are well informed of on why this is coming forward for recommendation in that way.
You talk about something that and it's later on in the policy. So, but you talked about it. So I'm just going to raise it.
That's all right.
Disadvantaged contractors.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way, particularly local contractors, for us as a county to encourage, to engage when you start looking at dissecting a contract, try to bring some small contractors in.
Right, some local businesses.
Yeah, that would be very helpful for community, because that money stays here versus going out,
Right.
going outside and stuff. Is there any way that can happen? And as a county, can we work toward that? And I know that at some point in time, Beaufort County did do something with disadvantaged contractors or small contractors in the past. Is that something that we can resurrect? Because there are a lot of contractors out there that just probably need a little bit of enticement and encouragement.
Some encouragement to apply.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really happy you asked that question. I'm excited to answer it. So,
Oh, good.
Victoria Moyer, she's
Yeah.
right back there. She's our Deputy Director of
I know
Procurement.
Victoria.
So in the last several months, she's been working on this new program, OpenGov. OpenGov is a solicitation program that allows vendors to enter in the program and submit their bids electronically. So it's a pretty neat system. Inside that system is a document for disadvantaged small businesses or local businesses. There's a form in there for them to fill out, and it's basically a questionnaire, and it highlights that is a local or disadvantaged business that's coming forward for that bid. So they're still part of the competitive nature, but we're trying to reach out to encourage more local bids
Good,
and
okay.
encourage disadvantaged businesses to do work with the county. They still have to meet they have
Sure.
to be qualified, have to be prepared to do the work and those types of things. But we certainly want to encourage that type of activity for Beaufort County contracts.
Are there some things that the county can do to encourage or to work toward? I mean, for
Yes.
example, I mean, you have the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an incentive to say to the chamber, we want you to reach out to work with small businesses, blah, 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 to get them
So
in a position to bid on our projects? and
what
stuff?
we need to do, and you can do this, for business owners that you know, you can encourage them to register in OpenGov. So when they register in OpenGov, they talk about their business and their abilities of their business. And when we do a solicitation, it maybe it's fencing. We need to put up a type of fence. So that will kind of go into the system, and we'll search every company that is registered in that business, and it will reach outside of that. There's a couple of different ways that they collect these capable vendors, and it will send them emails and requests, and let them know that Beaufort County has got a fencing contract that's out. Please apply, and then it gives them a link how to apply, how to go to the OpenGov process and fill that out. So encouraging local vendors or associations to encourage their members to register for the program. That's the way.
Okay.
Did I get that right?
It is free for
Yeah.
the vendors to
It's
register.
It's free for them to register, yeah.
Could we maybe have Ms. Moyer work with our PIO Hannah and put something out to encourage that,
Absolutely.
we're looking at this and this is where you would go to
Sure.
register?
Yeah.
That might be helpful to the community.
OpenGov.
Because I think Ms. Moyer told me that sometimes we put it out to 150 people, but now if you're using OpenGov, it goes to how many?
Well, when we were using the old system, for some projects, maybe only 100 or 150 vendors would be notified because they were registered and there wasn't a farther reach. With OpenGov, they actually invited a further net of vendors. So for a similar project that maybe only 100 or 150 vendors would have been notified, like 4,900 have been notified instead. We are seeing a big uptick in interest in our projects that I have put out lately, and some new vendor participation.
See, and that's great. So if we could put out something through Hannah
Sure.
about, if you're a vendor, take advantage of going into OpenGov and whatever, that might be helpful.
Sure.
That's part of
Thanks,
that
Mr.
casting that bigger net we
In the
talked about.
in the past, we advertised solicitation for minority and small business
Yes, sir.
owners, and we did a workshop. We advertised a workshop, and brought them all in to that workshop, and from that, we developed a vendor list of small and minority businesses that were actually actively engaged in the bidding process and the contracts that was coming through the county. But somewhere down the line, that fell apart.
Oh, I like that idea. We could certainly
And what I'm
do an
suggesting,
OpenGov class
Sure,
and
what I'm
encourage folks
suggesting-
to come in and register.
in Gerald's comment,
Advertising.
Yeah.
is to, sometime these businesses just need a little help. How to keep books, how to do record, how to do bids, et cetera, that, someplace like the chamber can help with.
Ms. Taberner can help them do their taxes.
I don't want to do that after season.
No, I like that idea. You know, both of our chambers in Beaufort have business incubators.
Incubators.
That's right,
Exactly.
and they do have some classes to help with business plan development, managing their taxes that they might have to pay
Sure.
and things like that.
And then we
Sales
have,
tax,
we
sales
have
tax
this-
management. If you're a small business and you're not doing your sales tax right, you're gonna get in trouble.
You're going to get it.
So it's important that folks that have small businesses understand that and keep up with those. And some of those, the chambers, I think, do
That,
have
and
those
we have
business
also Mr.
incubators.
Goodman, Martin Goodman with the small business, you know, they.
Yeah, yeah.
We got resources out there, sometimes you just need a little push, a little
Some pushing,
encouragement, yeah. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Application is an issue.
Okay, anybody have anything on the remaining page? That pretty much was the end right there.
Yes, I think we got
Anybody
there.
else?
So, if we're at the end, the purpose here was to have an open public discussion about the ordinance draft that's coming forward. I'll still encourage, anyone to send input to my email or give me a call, and we can, consider that as we go forward. The intent is to, accept the comments that we had tonight. We'll do some research. I'll work with Tom and Brittany and do some research as to some of the comments that we wrote down and make sure that it's appropriate. The ordinance has to be compliant with state law as well and our purchasing best practices. So those things are critical that we do. So we won't, we'll be careful not to make any mistakes when it comes to there. So any new comments or any comments that come forward, please let me know and we'll work them in. And the intent is to bring this to Finance Committee for consideration
On the
at
26th.
At the 26th. All right.
Okay, that concludes that part.
That
Do you
part's
need a
that.
5-minute break?
Do we?
Because-
Yes, absolutely.
Take 5 minutes. We'll come back at 4:21 and do A tax. And H tax. tax local.
Before we do that, I want to go back to,
We're good.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
I want to go back to sole source. What's the legal definition of sole source?
Well, let me see.
One source.
One source.
Do we have it in there, Tom?
But it's pretty rare, wouldn't it be?
If not, we might add it.
I mean, wouldn't you say that should be pretty rare?
Um,
It should be
Oh, there
the
we go.
exception, not the norm. But sole source is when the purchasing director has determined there's only one vendor that can provide the service or the product that we're seeking. That's what our current definition is. Now, we've discussed that we should expand that definition to where it's more beneficial to the county, to where we should include something to the extent where it says, or when a vendor is uniquely qualified to perform a service or provide a product. And there are certain instances where that's appropriate. I'll give you an example. Last week, our engineering department had a chance to where they could have paved a road on Defusky Island with a contractor that's already on the island doing work for Hague Point in the private community. We didn't have time to compete and get that to take advantage of their being there. But if we had the uniquely qualified or circumstances beneficial to the county language in our code, we could have saved the county a bunch of money by not having to pay for the mobilization costs
go
for them
over
to
there.
go over there. $400,000 mobilization costs we would have saved, all right? So we could have got that work done, but we have to get the code modified and add that language. Now, currently, the language before you doesn't have that, but we've provided that to John for him to include that. So when it comes to committee, you'll have that language, and we'll ask you to put that in there, because it'd be very beneficial to the county to have uniquely qualified circumstances or circumstances that benefit the county to make it worth it being the sole source for them, rather than send it out for competition. There'd be no competition, but it benefits the county in certain
Does that answer your question?
Sure, but you mean you could not come here to this council with an emergency declaration to
It's
to
not an
move forward
emergency.
because of
Not an
That is
Fuski's
not an
always
emergency.
an emergency.
No, this is not an emergency. It was fixing
Okay.
the road in front of the fire station. There are potholes on there, certain circumstances. It's a $300,000 contract, so you hate to spend $400,000 to mobilize for $300,000 worth of work. Well, we gotta save that, get that work done if we had that language. We just didn't have it. It's not urgent to get it done now. We can have it in there to where we can take advantage of it the next time.
Got it.
Could
Thank
could
you.
we add that definition to this section, sole source, to that section?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for that explanation. Brian sent me some of that language earlier this week specifically for that job, because of that job, that we'll make sure we include in the policy as well. And I did add that sole source in the definition list. Been trying
Could
to
I
capture
just
those.
ask if anyone in the public wants to
Oh, yeah.
comment on the policy we just went through? Or maybe you're all here for ATAX, we're good. Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. Robinson.
But before we move on, Mr. Glover asked a question about disadvantaged businesses, and
Yeah.
there is a section, not only in our open gov system, but there's a section on page 29, it's section 2-538, that specifically addresses disadvantaged businesses in the procurement code. All right, so we're ready to move on to A and H tax, so specifically local A and H tax, not the state A tax, local A tax. So why this policy draft was developed. Last year, we began looking at our local A and H tax, and our ordinance. We had some changes to the ordinance that came forward to council. And those ordinance changes inspired this type of work. So this is a process moving forward where we had first an ordinance change, and then you had a budget for each of the local accommodations and hospitality tax. That's A and H tax. I want to make sure I said that out loud so folks know what I'm talking about. That budget for accommodations tax and hospitality tax came forward for council. It has been to first and second reading It comes forward at the August
26.
26 council meeting for third reading and public hearing. It had to kind of stretch out there, so we got the correct notifications for the budget. And following that is this policy, which is how we will distribute those funds that will be appropriated at this point. So that is where we are with this conversation.
And
Hopefully.
again, this is local, we've already done state.
Yes, only local and local accommodations and hospitality tax.
Right.
We have an entirely independent committee to manage our state accommodations and hospitality tax appropriation. This is not quite as long as the other, but yet it's a few pages. So how do you want to begin this discussion?
Well, I mean, I'll presume everybody read it. I have some editing things that I'll just send you personally,
Okay.
but then I have other questions, and if other people do. I continued to throw in unincorporated in various areas. For example, in the very first paragraph, it says, see the last line, it says, with a priority of funding those areas where the A tax and H tax are collected. To me, I put in unincorporated Beaufort County. I'm not sure everyone in the public knows that we collected in unincorporated Beaufort County. Hilton Head collects their own, Bluffton collects their own, City of Beaufort collects their own. So that's why you'll keep seeing unincorporated in here. I just wanted to make that clear for
Okay.
public and our committee.
Certainly.
Okay, so you want to go to your yellow part there?
Sure. So the first part is under grant allocation requirements. What's highlighted there is I'll just read it. For the amounts distributed under the accommodation and hospitality tax grant award program, funds will be distributed with a goal of 75% dedicated to organizations and projects that generate tourism in the unincorporated areas of Beaufort County where accommodations tax and hospitality tax revenue are created by the county, and these shall include, and they're listed. So that 75% goal is from the ordinance that was already approved. So that's where that comes from, and it's highlighted there just to identify what you talked about. A is organizations that are physically located in areas where the county collects A&H tax revenues, provided the organization also sponsors projects or events in those areas. Organizations that are not physically located in those areas where the county collects A&H tax revenue. However, the organization sponsors projects or events within those areas. And C is regional marketing organizations whose primary mission is to bring tourists to the region, including areas where the county collects A&H tax revenue.
And in those, I just kept putting unincorporated
Okay.
instead of area, because I think area might mislead some people.
Okay.
But I can give you those later.
Certainly.
Bless you.
Bless you. The next highlighted spot talks about the goal of that 25% of the balance of the dollars, of those appropriated dollars. So that is 25% of the county promotions funds would be allocated to organizations and projects in the incorporated areas of Beaufort County, meaning City of Beaufort, Town of Bluffton, Town of Port Royal, Hilton Head Island, and Yamasee. So the intent there is that we don't exclude those areas, but also give them some opportunity for those county-generated A and H tax dollars to bring programs to their area that would also benefit Beaufort County as they are inside of Beaufort County. That is also consistent with the ordinance that you approved earlier in the year.
And with this, I just want to point out to public and everybody else that a tourist is considered somebody who lives 50 miles or farther away. So for example, I live in Sun City, this is 23.3 miles. I'm not a tourist. I can come here and eat at the restaurants, go to the Oyster Festival, but I'm not considered a tourist for ATAX. But when I rented on Palmetto Dunes, I'm still not a tourist, right? But that, I wanted to throw that 50 mile an hour, or 50 miles, not 50 mile an
I
hour.
think that's called a staycation, right?
Yeah, that was a
Staycationers
staycation
don't
for me.
qualify, is that right?
Inexpensive one.
Mr. Roberts, I got.
Yes, sir.
I have a issue that, and I don't know how to get there, especially when a lot of the ATAX money is generated in a particular area, but because of statute and laws, we are restricted at this time to kind of help that area. And so I don't know how they move forward with that, and I'll just use the area. We get a lot of our ATAX dollars out of Fripp Island.
Yes, sir.
Fripp is basically a private
Private.
community, but they generate a lot of ATAX money.
No, it doesn't.
And so there are some needs there that they're facing. And so I wrestle with how do we, because if Fripp Island is not functioning for ATAX money, we're
Right.
not gonna get the money.
Right.
So, how do we help them, at the same time, stay within the laws and the statutes in moving forward and stuff? That's
So-
what I wrestle with.
Good question.
Well, I certainly understand, and we've had some of these conversations before and met with leaders on Fripp Island, and the restriction there is public access. The use of dollars, of A and H tax dollars in areas that allow for public access. So inside the gated community, there's that restriction is that there's no public access because these are public dollars. So we would have to be careful that we comply with the law, but there's perhaps a creative opportunity to use some of these tax dollars to defray other costs that they may have. But they would, by any means, they would have to comply with with our ordinance, with code and state law for sure.
Yeah,
But
well,
it's a tough one.
Yeah, that's where my struggle is right now,
Yeah.
so I just want to put that on the table. Yeah. okay.
Maybe we can encourage them to have an event where the gates open. I don't know. But
I mean, we've talked about this, Mr. Glover, and because there are a lot of gated communities, we're all private, so like Sun City's private, we're not eligible for ATAX money, even though we have pickleball events and everything else that bring people in, but we're a private gated community, so
Yeah.
we struggled with that one already.
Brian's got some comment?
I can help a little bit if you like to hear it.
They're not, yeah.
A big way that they can take advantage of the local accommodation tax dollars and hospitality tax dollars is like when the money is provided to nonprofits to hold like festivals, like on St. Helena or here in Beaufort. By funding that, the people in Fripp or Data or Defusky or any other gated community can come to those events, and they're getting the benefit of those tax dollars being for everybody. Another way is like if we build a civic center or something like that on St. Helena, they would have access to that building there. So if some of these funds are used for that, they're getting the benefit of those dollars with quick, easy access.
Or if we built a splash pad
Yes, ma'am.
or a water arena. yeah.
Anything in the area where they could travel to and take advantage of it, they're getting the benefit of it.
Okay,
Okay.
well, Mr. Glover doesn't want his splash pad, so.
No, you got it. You can have it.
Okay, Mr. Robinson, go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
This is new now, the committee, right?
Yes.
Would you explain how it
so-
was done in the past?
So here's the meat of this policy is how do we equitably distribute these funds to outside agencies who are seeking our support, your support of these dollars. That's what was really important. So this is, we'll call this the grant award process here. To be considered for funding, an application must be submitted to our website. Last year, we didn't, in FY '24, we did not distribute or issue or award any local A or H tax dollars because we were working on this policy to come forward. And now that we're in that process, this year might be different than future years. as we move forward. So our application process was open until, was it May 1st, the end of May?
May 31st, right?
May 31st. Our application process was still left online, so we were accepting applications till May 31st, but there's no distribution policy with to address those requests for dollars, and this helps us do that. So one of the things that we wanted to do is emulate the success of the state ATAX committee and create a local or a committee that would help us determine the validity of those requests of dollars and help prioritize those requests from outside agencies for those dollars. In the past, this was done by staff. Local A&H tax dollars, we would get some requests in, and staff would say, yep, we can award all of them or some of them at different rates. But I would say, while it was successful in the past, this is a more equitable way to move forward. Of course, this is a draft, so these are suggestions that we had coming forward, was to put together this Accommodations and Hospitality Tax Advisory Committee. And the suggestion is at least a member of the County Council's Finance Committee, at least one staff member from the Finance Department, which would probably be Bryson.
Would that be conflict of interest since
Well, I think at this point, we need someone on staff to be present to know what's happening in the committee and whether or not it's appropriate to vote on there. So maybe that's something we can look at, voting members or something like that. But we've got to have some staff members present, because staff members are going to be responsible for taking action based on the committee's decision. So maybe
They're
that's
gonna
something
carry
we
the
can
brunt of
address.
it.
Voting member or not, you know. Certainly, if you guys have any comment or input, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are as well. This is a draft. This is all new for us. So, a member of the state ATAX committee. So I thought it was really important, and Tab and I talked about this, to bring someone from the state ATAX committee who have been doing this for many years, and to be a member of this board, and they can also help with this cross of applications. So a lot of agencies apply not only to the county, but to municipalities as well as state and local ATAX. And that could be very purposeful. It's certainly allowable, but, you know, there's an opportunity to make sure that we're understanding all of the applications that come into us. Then the county administrator, CFO, or a designee. So someone from the executive staff was a thought. It's not necessary, but. And then a member of the public. I think it's important for transparency as well that we consider asking a member of the public to be part of this advisory committee or board.
Would we take applications for that? Is that your thought?
I don't know.
Because then we're gonna be interviewing 50 people.
It could be. It could be. You know, it's this hasn't been done before, so this is an opportunity for you to create what you want.
Yep.
Should it be a recommendation for a council member? And maybe we have 11 recommendations or 9 recommendations, and we look at those, or should we accept applications through a board type of board that would be managed by our clerk staff? I don't know. Some thoughts? What are your thoughts?
No, mine is that I love the public. I love the public's involvement, so I'll leave it like that.
So, Mr. Glover is there for a member of the public to be on this committee, absolutely.
Yes.
I agree. I think it's really important.
So we would have to literally exclude people that are on state ATAX committee, or, you know what I'm saying? If you love
Right.
public, you want somebody new. Is that where you're going?
No. I'm saying, an individual, you got one member of the public, I just love public, you know, so.
The whole world.
Yeah, I'll take more members of the public.
You can have as many as you want.
Committees.
It's important to keep in mind that by creating this committee, you're kind of creating a public body. So when you're gonna appoint members, probably council is going to appoint them. And the only way to be fair by appointing a member of the public is to do it through the application process. It goes
And
to
interview.
our clerk's office, and then have the appropriate interviews, or at least the consideration for council to recommend who to appoint, and then to appoint them.
I would envision it like we did for green space. People could apply, and then there was a screening, then there was interview, and then there was appointment.
If there was enough that there was a need for interviews, it depends on what the interest is gonna be. And there's nothing wrong with you going out and encouraging people to apply as well. But we'll have to create the application, but that should be easy because we have application processes for our boards already. Just format something based on that, and then we give the experience. The concern about having someone from the state ATAX committee being a part of this local ATAX committee, let me just take a chance to look at that to make sure it's not dual office. I don't think they're exercising the sovereign, but they are making recommendations to council on the expenditure of funds. I just want to confirm that it's not a violation of the Constitution by being a dual office, by each having an office. So, but I'll have to get back to you on that.
You're gonna look into that?
I'll look into it.
Okay. Because also the point to have someone from the state committee, the state ATAX, they have a good knowledge of,
Absolutely.
The
There's
rules,
Great
yeah.
benefit in there, and if nothing else, they could be an advisor or an ex-official member.
yeah, that's a possibility too, yeah.
I like that.
All right, can you think of anything else we need to add to that decision? Obviously, we're gonna do some more research and have some more discussion there. I really like the idea of having an advisory committee, that is, made up of several different disciplines and folks from the public as well. And the intent there that the advisory committee would review the applications, make their recommendations to County Council Finance Committee. Finance Committee would review those and then forward those to County Council for adoption.
The only thing there's only 5 members here, so
Uh-huh.
we were in a jam with state board ATAX committee because we didn't have enough people. I might consider taking this to 7.
Okay.
Because somebody might have to recuse themselves when one of the vote, and now we're
Sure.
down to 4, and just to make it fair, we could have more public people, add another public,
If you like.
and maybe add another council person outside of finance.
Ooh, no.
Okay, not.
I think
But-
Mr. Glover just volunteered. Is that what I heard?
No, he doesn't want to do that. We could add like 2 members from the public. You don't want to have a 6 member, so you got to pick someone else.
Okay.
But that's my thought.
The approving authority
Yeah.
for any application grant, so you
Yeah.
don't have too many members on the.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to take it to 7 in case somebody's
All
not
right.
there. You're down to 3 or 2, or we just lived that dream last year. I don't want to go back there.
All right. Well, I tell you what, I will work with Brian on that and see what we can come up with for a 7th member and see what we can flesh that out a little bit more.
Okay.
So we'll refine that section a little bit. And then, let's see, okay, so it does say 5 there. So we will, the selection committee needs to be a little more formalized, in similar to a procurement process. An evaluation form that each member would independently score, and then those scores kind of accumulated, counted, whatever you want to call it, and then we prioritize those awards from there. There's a proposed grant timeline. Of course, this year is going to be a little bit different for us because this will be the first year, so we may have some modifications to get through this year. But the intent, if we get this, we get all this in place. We have our ordinance in place, we have our budget in place, and we have our distribution policy in place. Coming into next year, you can see that we would have essentially open our applications, our requests for applications in early January, giving folks plenty of time to complete their applications. We may even want to consider in between that January and that May date, training opportunity similar to what the state has done this year to encourage some of those applications to come in, and make sure that folks understand what they're signing up for and the compliance required if they were to receive an award. And I think that has been a challenge in the past.
I think that would be very helpful, and it brings us in sync with the state committee. And that way people know what they're applying for. And
Right.
like you said, the compliance requirements. So I think that would be helpful. We can put that in there.
Yep.
And we could just steal what the state committee's doing.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Stewart would like to make a comment.
Oh, certainly. Yep, come on up, Dick.
It's a workshop.
Thank you.
You got 3 minutes. No, only kidding.
I've never used more than that. have I?
Only kidding.
A couple of things about what's public and what's not. If a hotel is located in the unincorporated portion of this county, that hotel doesn't provide public access. They don't want people just wandering the halls. They have a form of restriction. That means you check in at the front desk. In
Right.
places like Hilton Head, where I understand 82% of the geographic property is within gates, they've interpreted public access to mean that if you rent a short-term rental, you get the right to go in there and access the rental that you rented. And state law and federal law protect folks from being denied the opportunity to rent those on the basis of any number of criteria. So if you interpret public, meaning that space is offered to people, and that's what's required for you to collect hospitality taxes and accommodation taxes, that removes the issue that you raised on Fripp and removes the issue on Harbor and removes the issue on Defusky. And I think that's an important criteria that I'd ask you to look at. As it relates to the state board, the state can be a great resource, and I would encourage you to take advantage of it just as you're proposing. But I'm also aware, as some of you are, and by the way, the reason I'm speaking, and thank you for your time, is because I'm the county's representative on the CVB board, and we deal with these things all the time, and I also own a couple of hotels, so I know something about that side of the business. But what we are occurring right now is a number of jurisdictions in the state of South Carolina are suing the state Parks, Recreation, Tourism Department, and/or Airbnb, because Airbnb has reached agreement to send their tax monies to the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism folks, and they send you a check every so often an amount that they deem to be appropriate. And some of the folks to file suit to say that deeming what's appropriate may not in fact be what's fair. So when you ask those folks to be inside the house advising you on how you should spend your money, that seems reasonable and responsible, but you might check with the folks that are suing them to see if they're the folks you want inside the house, or if you may end up putting yourself on the other side of that suit at some place in the future. Having said that, I am with you on this in the public, and one of the concerns I would have is what we had when I was on county council back when, I think, Mr. Dawson, you and I came on at the same time. And that was that if you end up with the county folks deciding among themselves the various pet projects and what they're going to do with their the funds, then that individual person sitting there sort of feeling like they're not really a part of the process. They're just sort of there for eyeshadow. I'd encourage you to consider at least 3 people from the public, because you got geographic dispersity,
Yeah,
you got
okay.
industry dispersity, and you got a legitimate issue. Last thing, and I want to make this because I know everybody cares about it deeply, as do I, is when you look at using accommodation taxes, 2% and 3%, state and local, for things like workforce and affordable housing, thank you in advance for remembering how important that is to the success of this county and the people who live here. Thank you.
We actually have that in the ordinance for the tax, yeah.
I didn't
300,000.
I didn't see it, but that's
Yeah.
why. Thank you.
Oh, because it's in the ordinance, not this.
It's in the budget.
All right.
Yeah, but it's not in this document we're looking at.
I think it's coming out of 3% or 2%.
Both.
And then it's coming out of state too. the
It is,
state
it is in
tax.
state,
Yeah.
so the 15% that's allowable by the state,
Right.
is in the ordinance now as available. We're still working on the application process, but the funds have been reserved for that.
Kinda earmarked, yeah.
Right, right, certainly. Thanks for your comments, sir. I like the creative comments about the gated communities and that access. So we'll exploit that, work with legal team and see if there's some room there. But that's certainly Mr. Stewart's creative mind, finding ways to get things done.
Any other comment from anybody in the audience? I can't believe Mr. Wells isn't gonna comment. Okay, not yet, but
He's
he
happy.
will eventually, okay.
All right.
right, go
So,
ahead.
we can, let's see, I think we can move on from the.
I went down to criteria for project eligibility.
Mhm.
See that sentence, that you have one sentence? That's where I put, according to SCPRT, the Travel Institute of America and other agencies, travel distance is generally defined as 50 miles
Right.
from home.
Okay,
So that people understand I'm not a tourist, really.
right. So, we'll better define that in the
Yeah.
document, 50 mile.
But I thought that would be a good place to put that.
Okay.
Okay, and this next part's right from the code, so.
Yes, it is. It is directly from the code and compliant with the state code as well. So there's not anything we can change there. or-
Anybody have
or
a
we should
question on
change.
those? We've kind of beat this one up in the past. Okay.
So the, the section there on funding priorities, that is essentially what the committee, or that we would put together, the advisory committee would use as their reference for consideration of applicants. The next section goes on to application components, what we expect an applicant to provide. This is pretty consistent with our applications now, right? With our existing application process, so we didn't need to change that much.
But if we do training, we'll have to put it in here somewhere.
Absolutely, we
Okay.
can do that. I did make a note of that, because I think that's a pretty important to do. I think that's a great measure that the state ATAX committee is doing, and I think that's going to be really successful, and we should steal that idea from
And I
them.
really hope it encourages more groups to apply.
Mhm.
You know, that might say, I don't know how to do that, I can't do it. Maybe they would apply for these funds.
As much as it should be about training, it should be in great part discussion about expectation of compliance for folks who are awarded, so that they are not surprised, the county's expectations of reporting for these dollars. The budget and eligible expenses section is pretty clear, I think. Did you have any questions there? I don't want to belabor this any more than we need to.
Nope, I didn't. Anybody else?
Good.
Yeah, let's go back to, quickly, the timeline.
Yes, sir.
And you got the calendar year there. And just, let me walk through an event, two events.
Mhm.
I'm gonna use, the Shrimp Festival that's happened here, generally in October.
Mhm.
And then there's the Gulf Festival that usually happen here, generally in May. Time-wise, if I look at this calendar timeline here, the Shrimp Festival would probably be okay in placing the application in. Something like the Gulf Festival that happened in May, they would have to do it a year in advance
Yes, sir.
Yep.
to make it happen.
Mhm. Absolutely.
That
So-
could be challenging a lot of times, because they're probably going through the current event and then they're asking to be.
All right.
Yeah, so I want to throw that out there as far
Because
as
we,
timetable.
because we missed a year for appropriation there, and their appropriation this year wouldn't really get them any dollars until next year. I see what you're saying.
Okay,
Okay.
First year might be a little tough if we get through, but we
the
can leave
thing
some
is that,
opportunity in there for some special circumstances
so a lot
of
of my
funding.
festivals happen in the spring and the fall of the year. Very seldom we have festivals in the winter months.
Mm-hmm.
And, the calendar could be brought back to like a November application, October application, but that's just me and my,
Don't forget they can still apply for the state aid tax, the 2%.
Correct.
And that's through the fall-winter process.
Right.
yeah.
So they can still apply, they apply for the 2%, they would be on track for this year. But for next year, to get local aid tax for the process, you have to apply by a certain deadline. It's the same thing for state 2%. They've got a one-year gap, then when your thing is, you may have to apply, you're in advance, that goes a couple months.
We don't ever get a request from, but I'm gonna use them as an example. We don't ever get a request from the Water Festival Committee. Okay,
Yeah, we do.
we do?
State ATAC, didn't we have it? You talk about the water festival here? Oh, no, I'm thinking of the oyster festival, never mind.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm using it as an example.
Yeah,
But if we, because of their organization structure, they could fit any timeline we got. There's a
Probably.
lot of festival people that are not that sophisticated or have the organization to apply a year in advance for funding. That's the only
I see.
comment I'm gonna make. Okay.
so I want Mr. Wells, he raised his hand because you're gonna talk about the timing of festivals, maybe?
We'll talk about timing the festivals at another day and time, but as far as this local ordinance, this local exact H tax, the question is it a reimbursed grant?
Yes.
Since it's a reimbursed grant, festivals will still apply in the timeline and manner they will. Their level of reimbursement will take place post
Correct.
festival. So in festival in May, they may be riding that reimbursement into June, July, if they have their ducks in a row. So they technically could, I would encourage my friends at the Golden Festival to apply for both state A tax and local A tax, because they're both set for reimbursement.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't wanna talk about the timing of festivals if it increases tourism?
I mean, that's something for the committee to go through. As the committee sat down, we'd love to share some information about why that economic lift is important, why investment in festivals are important for that timing, and what time of year it happens to this community. That's probably.
Because what I learned from all this, from especially you two, it's a return on investment. So we're just not putting money out there to do something. The question is, does it put heads in beds and is it bringing revenue? And if we have all the festivals in May, that's not increasing tourism. They're gonna go from one to, so that's a committee decision.
They do provide economic growth in certain capacity. Now, if the grant for local exact is gonna be a upfront, with reports due at the end of the fiscal, that would benefit the vast majority of our festivals. Because they are, as Councilman Glover shared, they're not as, we'll call it organized as a water festival, or have the, fund balance to offset the expenses that take to carry on the festival. So some consideration is given to those types of festivals.
Okay, thanks. All right, Mr. Robinson, we're past this part.
All right, so reimbursement procedures are addressed on the last page. So in between where we are and there is funding priorities, budget eligible expenditures, those kinds of things. That is compliant with the state law. That is not new. Statement of assurance, this is the applicant, or the application must be signed electronically by a representative of the organization to denote that all the information provided in the application is accurate, complete, and to the best of the applicant's knowledge and ability. So this is really that application process. We go on to talk about the applicant evaluation. So this would be some discussion of the committee.
Yeah, this is
Right.
all new, correct? The scoring criteria?
Well, we haven't really done this before. This
Yeah.
was a staff decision before, so the criteria, the evaluation criteria, was really modeled after some other agencies that use this formula, and this really supports the creation of the advisory committee. So there's some guidance for the advisory committee on the expectations of the application evaluation.
There it is, Brenna, page 7, yeah.
He said last page, how's it not?
Yeah, well, because I moved around, yeah.
You had to tell me to take it all.
Well, there's no page numbers either, so I'll just flash
I put
numbers
it
over at
on,
you.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
You have to put page numbers, it drives me nuts.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, so that's the evaluation
okay.
criteria.
That is there, and then the
See, I put 'em-
application package, so there's three bullet points there. that really have the application package, what is the expectation for inclusion in the application package, which would be a reflection of the application evaluation that's formed. And then we go on to talk about award notification and reimbursement procedures. Do you want me to read through the reimbursement procedures that are there, since we just talked
I
about it?
mean, I think it's pretty straightforward,
Right.
but I wanted to put something in there. and-
Okay.
Well, I want to discuss it.
Sure.
When I looked at past documents, I see that some people did not comply with a quarterly report, a final report. And, okay, so this is the law and order part of me.
Mhm.
If you don't comply with the reporting requirements, to me, you should be ineligible for the next year. Because these people in finance spend a lot of time tracking all this down. And if you can't spend your money, submit for reimbursement and submit a report, and that includes the county, so I'm gonna throw you guys under the bus too. If we don't get those reports, I believe they should be ineligible to apply for the next year.
So why don't we, and I don't disagree at all, but I'm thinking of like a progressive disciplinary policy where someone doesn't report on time, we give them the opportunity to remediate that. So fix your mistake and come back forward, and if they don't comply with that remediation, then it may be we exclude them from a future application.
Well, I used to be a school principal. If
Right.
that's the rule, that's the rule. But go
Yeah.
ahead, Brian wants to
Yeah.
jump in on me
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. I knew he would. I was waiting.
He doesn't like it.
Interim consideration, something less drastic would be that they could be eligible to apply and they could receive a grant, but they couldn't receive any money until they've completed all the reporting requirements for the prior year. So you can't receive any funds from a new grant without a complete package from the prior year. That would just be something to consider.
Okay, that's something for the finance committee will have to discuss.
I do agree that there needs to be some teeth in there for expectation of compliance or reporting. We should not be in the business of awarding funds without knowing what's being done with the dollars that you represent on behalf of your constituents. So we can put some language in there that's appropriate. I'm kind of in between you and Brian.
I know.
I like to give folks the opportunity to correct their mistake. And then if we've communicated clearly and given them the opportunity to remedy their issue, then we sharpen our teeth.
If we do the training, it'll be clear then.
Sure.
And I'm just looking at accountability to our residents, that we're not just giving, John Robinson $50,000 for some festival he never does. There's an element of accountability to be
The
had.
reimbursement part protects us from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
All right, so the reporting requirements is what follows. Beaufort County requires grantees to complete one quarterly report each quarter, even if reimbursement funds are not being sought at that time. Final report once a project is complete and all funds are received for the project event. Grantees are required to submit proof of grant expenditure with each drawdown, including the detailed invoices or proof of payment additional to the progress report document. Funds will not be provided upfront nor without proper documentation as stated above.
That's good.
And then lastly is the grant acknowledgement. Grantee must acknowledge receipt of the accommodations tax and H-tax funding by including the Beaufort County logo or by stating that the funds were provided by Beaufort County, especially in the degree into which your project contributes to Beaufort County tourism. So it's important for these events to acknowledge where their dollars came from, where their dollars support this, and hopefully that acknowledgement garners some positivity, that we're helping get these programs off the board and generating more dollars. I remember not long ago, Mr. Stewart talked about the dollars generated here, and it was for $1 spent, tourism was generating back $11. Is that right? So that is significant investment in these tourism programs, and they're
Do
really
we
important
require
for us
this
to-
now that they acknowledge where they got the grant money?
I believe that we ask for that, but it's not in an ordinance or a policy.
Do we do it with the state fund, state account?
Not with the state, there's no requirement on logo placement, on ads, that's something that South Carolina DOT requires, but not the county. That would be a further conversation about making sure that's clear about what the expectations are.
Yeah.
We hope that it can be put back on our website, so that we can point back to it, or in sponsorship materials, festivals. But if we were to run that ad for a visit, want to see the county, I might not want to put your logo on there, I'd rather show landscape
Yeah.
and waterways as opposed to the logo, if that makes sense. But I can acknowledge on website or in sponsorship. those
Sure.
criteria. So that would be something that would definitely need to be clarified, especially with folks who are sorting out ads.
Mhm.
Asking for ad dollars, that was verified somewhere else. Festivals probably use that thing on the board, but not, I just want to make sure that.
Okay, so we'll have to talk about that. Okay, anybody else have a question or comment? This was really good, Mr. Robinson, I appreciate it.
Well, I didn't do it. I'm just here talking. Christine Webb.
Christine,
Christine
Bryson,
Webb back over
Brian,
here, and
uh-huh.
Bryson work on these every day. Christine did the bulk of this work, and I got to read it to you. So they did all the work, so thank you to y'all.
And again, to acknowledge, Brian did a lot of the work on the front end
Yes, he
with the
did.
state thing, yeah.
Yes, this, the county team is very important, very professional, and get a lot of things done. We would not get anything done on our own. It does take a team.
Yeah.
And even if we argue sometimes, we still get it done.
Well, we appreciate this work. I was asked by Mr. McEllen, are you going to present the procurement policy at the county council on the 26th?
That is the intent,
Okay,
yes.
good.
So it will not be at county council, it will be at the finance committee
Finance.
first.
Right.
For finance committee's consideration to forward to county council. But
Okay.
yes, that is our goal.
All right. Anybody else question, comment from the council?
Well done.
Larry, anything for you? Okay, anybody in the audience? Okay, then I think we are adjourned. I want to thank you again, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you.
That was a lot of work, a lot of time.